Tomb Raider, The Angel of Darkness, adapted from the novelization by J.R. Milward, based on an original story by A. Murti Schofield, with J.R. Milward and Adamm Khuevrr, with music by Peter Connolly and Martin Iverson. Episode 17.
Where the bloody hell is he? You've asked that question 3 times in the last 10 minutes. Be patient. What makes you so confident? I'm your instincts. I trust him to keep his word. He'll be back just as soon as he can. He'd better be. Dear Lara, is that concern I detect in your voice? He's got my painting. If he's lost it or gotten himself killed, I'll... One day you'll admit the obvious to yourself. Relax. He'll be here soon. How do you know? Because I can hear someone coming. There was movement through the glass. Stale air whooshed out as the doors slid apart. A gun preceded its owner through the opening, scanning the interior. He looked everywhere, except above the door. I had to credit him. My stalker had some impressive reflexes. He sensed my ambush and turned, gun raised, but I was quicker. My kick sent his pistol flying, while I levelled my own gun to within an inch of his forehead. His expression gave way to a resigned calm, just as a shape lurched in the darkness beyond the door. The stranger's eyes snapped open and widened as a disfigured thing in a straitjacket toppled to the ground behind him, gargling as it died. My eyebrow rose at the filth-encrusted hands and rusty additions to its skull. Trust the American to have all the fun.
Huh. Thanks. I thought I'd got them all.
Glad you came back to save me, stranger.
Name's Kurtis.
Lara. And this is business. He grunted, but wisely held still. No doubt aware of the gun still levelled at his head, and stayed that way while I rummaged through his pockets. I tried to ignore the undeniable intimacy. The bronze disc dangling from his hip strap was hurriedly tossed out of reach.
I owe you one.
You owe me a painting.
Sorry. That went AWOL at the Louvre.
What?
I don't have it. It was missing when I woke up.
No, Lara, you're not allowed to shoot him yet. Had all of my effort been for nothing? If this cocky American had sabotaged my hunt for Werner's killer, he would be leaving the Strahov with his balls in a paper bag. If he was lucky. Do you know where it is now?
My guess? The Cabal. They already have 3 Obscura paintings, and they've been hunting yours for a long time.
How could you possibly know that?
I know.
How helpful. I felt a note of excitement ripple through my belly. The implications if Eckhardt already had 4 paintings. I shook my head, trying to digest the information. So, what brings you here from Paris?
Eckhardt. We have business only one of us is going to walk away from.
Ah, that kind of business. Bizarrely, I found some of my anger beginning to simmer down. There was more to this man than mere arrogance and paranoia. The enmity in his words was the sort only gained through intimate and devastating trauma. Perhaps I had an ally against Eckhardt, instead of just another obstacle. The corner of his eye met mine.
You?
Personal reasons. He turned and regarded me. A lone wolf, Maggie noted, and I had to admit the analogy was pretty strong. There was an indefinable air of competence about him, of alertness and intelligence that weighed up his environment in every detail. His clothes showed recent bloodstains, and he seemed to favour his side a little, as though breathing was uncomfortable. There was a fresh cut above his right eye, a companion to an old scar on his cheek. His stubble was a little rougher, his hair even more unkempt than the last time I'd seen him. There were dark rings beneath his eyes. What the devil had he been up to down there? Despite having my gun levelled to his heart, he managed a smile.
You know what Eckhardt is trying to do. If he can get all 5 Obscura paintings, he'll revive the Sleeper, rebreed the Nephilim race. He's been collecting ingredients for months now.
Ingredients?
Alchemically transmuted elements from his murder victims' bodies. He needs them to reassemble the Sanglyph once he has all the pieces.
I've seen him at work as the Monstrum, with that glove.
He made it himself. Spent years looting reliquaries and crypts all over Europe, mostly for shrouds from dead saints. The glove will keep him safe from the Sanglyph's power, if he ever manages to reconstruct it.
And what exactly does the Sanglyph do? He hesitated, and his eye fell on the disc, lying where I had thrown it. In total silence, it began to glow with gentle light and slowly rose until level with my face. I rallied my composure, not allowing my unease to show, as the disc spun lazily, circling first his body, then the space between us. Razor sharpness glittered along its bladed edge.
The opposite of this. The energy of life. To the Chinese, it's Qi. The Algonquian called it Manitou. Lucas pinched the idea and called it the Force. It's the energy separating living things from inanimate matter. And Eckhardt wants control over it. He'll capture and channel the life sources from dozens, maybe hundreds of beings to awaken the Sleeper. That's why he needs the glove to shield himself. If you or I touched the Sanglyph with our bare skin, our energy would be instantly absorbed. I'd be dead before we even realized it.
So that's it, I thought. The gun in my hand did not waver. Despite my misgivings, I found I wasn't intimidated. Golden warmth radiated from the disc, immersing me with feelings of security and calm. It made me think of log fires and steaming baths after a long, cold slog through a blizzard. He could kill me with a thought, I realized with a jolt. Even my reflexes aren't good enough against this. I'd never get a chance to pull the trigger. He's purposefully withholding the advantage. He's showing that he trusts me. The last painting. It's here, isn't it?
Yes, in the vault of trophies, right beneath us. The paintings must be destroyed. And to do that, I'll need that shard you picked up from the Louvre.
The blade seemed to absorb my body heat as I withdrew it from my pack. A tooth of gleaming black ice with an angelic pommel. I didn't miss the way Kurtis's pupils dilated at the sight. It was a sign well known to ancient Chinese jade merchants and meant a customer was hooked. There should be 3 periapt shards, right? To my surprise, he pulled an identical blade from one of his many pockets. The ones I could have sworn I'd searched thoroughly. He noticed my expression and smirked.
Right. Eckhardt has the last one. If all 3 shards are united, they can destroy him permanently. So he keeps it nice and safe.
United how, exactly?
He must be stabbed with all 3 shards. Eckhardt's blessed or cursed with some of the Nephilim's immortality. The shards disrupt that power, make him mortal and vulnerable.
He hefted the blade, leaving me in no doubt that he was ex-military of some sort, and offered me the shard, hilt first, a clear entreaty. I suddenly felt trapped between fire and ice, between the disc's circling flame and the chill blade in my hand. It had been so long since I'd put my faith in anyone. Putai and Salia had rescued me from physical death, and Horus's influence had begun the healing process within my spirit. But I realized now that I'd only really begun to recover since Werner had invited me to Paris. Again, the memory of him lying in my arms rose up, fresh and urgent. My 2 years of living as a recluse had not bridged the rift between us. I wanted to avenge his death, but there was no guarantee that doing so would make me whole again. Put frankly, the prospect of trusting another person the way I had trusted Werner scared me. But then the possibility of Eckhardt's defeat suddenly loomed larger than my fear. I was closer than I dared hope. Only 1 painting and 1 shard to find, and the monstrum would fall forever. Reluctantly, I had to admit that Maggie was right. I felt the wings of her strength enfold me, straightening my back and squaring my shoulders. Despite all my bravura, all the more solitary than thou attitude that had been my paradigm since I was 16, I suddenly felt an overpowering need to reciprocate Kurtis's gesture. Horus would probably have called it a leap of faith, but Maggie's presence reassured me that Kurtis was worthy of my trust. I'd reconcile the irony later. And you? What's your stake in killing Eckhardt?
Do you know where the shards come from? No, I wouldn't expect so. Very few people do. They're ancient weapons of the Lux Veritatis. 2 of them were entrusted to my father.
He's part of the Order.
We both were. Eckhart murdered him to stop the shards passing into my hands. He failed.
The tension in his shoulders tightened, giving me a glimpse into a pit of emotion deeper and more dangerous than I could have ever suspected. He was peaceful only in the same way Yellowstone Park is peaceful. Calm on the surface, but boiling with the fires of hell just beneath. And I thought we had a personal stake in this. So, Eckhardt went after your father. And you want revenge?
Justice.
We should work together. I tossed him my shard, returning my gun to its holster. He caught the shard automatically, and surprise replaced the fury in his eyes.
You're trusting me.
Look, we can divide the forces against us if we split up. You need the third shard, so you should go after that. I'll find the last painting. We can rendezvous and use the shards to destroy it. Warily, he stepped closer and frowned at the unfolded engraving in my hands. I didn't miss the hint of doubt, even suspicion, created by my offer of an alliance. It wasn't difficult to see that he, too, had issues with the concept of trust. He smelt like the lion enclosure at London Zoo. Hot, sweaty, and curiously attractive. Work now, play later.
Eckhardt guards the shard in his old alchemy lab in the lower regions. I can find my way there if you go after the painting, but the vault's probably not as accessible as the map shows. Eckhardt's been trying to find a way inside for a long time, but...
Oh, please. A 15th century underground vault. I could get us in with both hands tied behind my back. The entrance is underwater. No problem.
You've experience with this sort of thing.
Plenty. Let's go.
If you say so. After you, milady.
For a moment, we traded a look. It was worth the capital letter. Despite myself, I found my own mouth twitching to match his smile. I was amused to feel a little extra swagger in my step. And to think, not so long ago you were all for killing him on sight. He's growing on me, a little. Besides, I can always change my mind later. Yeah. Maybe if I kept repeating it, I'd start to believe it, too. The entrance is underwater. No problem.
You've experience with this sort of thing.
Plenty. Let's go.
If you say so. After you, milady. How did she get the engraving and the map?
It doesn't matter. We've lost too many men trying to open that damned vault. Perhaps her special talents will help us get what we need. Her resourcefulness is impressive for a mortal.
You don't think there's a danger she can destroy the last painting?
We won't allow her the opportunity. The mail will be coming this way soon. Make the preparations.
It may be wiser to confine the Lux Veritatis rather than kill him. If she fails to retrieve the painting, he may succeed in her place.
The whelp is nothing. A boy with barely a fraction of his father's skills. His desire for revenge is nobility disguising weakness, nothing more. He poses no danger to us.
That may be so. However, speaking as your advisor, I would urge caution. Despite the risks, there is a good probability of the woman succeeding, And, if she does, she may prove more difficult to destroy than other mortals. There is an obvious connection between her and the Lux Veritatis. We could use that against her should she become uncooperative.
Subtle, as always. Very well. Order Gunderson to bring him to me alive. Have you had any word from Luther yet?
He's still having difficulty calculating the location. Even when translated, the Lux Veritatis scrolls were written in coded prose. Most of the original reference points have been lost, a substantial number of them having been obliterated during a decades-long pogrom. If only you'd restrained your hatred to understand how much more useful the Lux Veritatis would be alive than dead.
Very well. You will go and organize the final stages for my return.
You wish me to begin the awakening ritual now?
I'm ordering you. No more delays. You know what you have to do. The 5th Obscura Painting is mine already.
Four paintings down, 1 to go. 4 down, 1 to go. The mantra repeated itself in time to my jogging steps, mirroring the beating of my heart. I wouldn't lie to myself. When Werner had told me there were 5 obscure paintings, the idea had settled on me like the weight of the celestial sphere on Atlas's shoulders. When the old archaeologist's request had suddenly metamorphosed into a manhunt, it had seemed to be an even more impossible burden for me to carry to fruition. I'm no shirker when it comes to a challenge, but isolated from my usual resources and hamstrung by the need for secrecy, I had resorted to a day-by-day strategy in order to cope. The search for 5 paintings might have stretched to months, or even years, assuming that the authorities didn't catch me first. Kurtis's words had changed all that. For the first time since Werner's death, a light had appeared in the darkness ahead of me, reachable not by clawing for every handhold, but by trusting that if I leapt into the unknown, my daring would let me seize my objective with both hands. With one great effort, a single thrust inside my enemy's stronghold, Eckhardt and the Nephilim would fall, and a dear friend of mine would finally be avenged. The very idea was enough to make butterflies throw a party in my stomach. The corridor grew chillier and damper with every step as I hurried along. Kurtis had headed off in the opposite direction after we separated at the airlock. I'd had to resist the part of me that wanted to go with him, and ignore the half-hearted reasoning that we could watch each other's backs more effectively if we were together. Maggie might sulk at the idea, but even she knew, as Kurtis and I did, that the only thing that mattered now was taking down the Black Alchemist as quickly as possible. For that, we each had to do our jobs. Alone. My reluctance was not wholly down to my subconscious's yearning. There was also the lingering question of trust. Spiritually awakened I might be, but I'd also be a fool to think that just because Kurtis and I shared a mutual understanding and mission, we could count on each other to the nth degree. My natural cynical streak hadn't gone away, and might still make the difference between success and an ignominious death. A shadow fell across the far wall, vindicating that very philosophy.
Vigilance!
The Strahov lackey, whoever he was, spotted me and opened fire as I automatically dove to the side. Only a puddle broke my fall, and chips of concrete rained from the wall behind me. But my preservation instincts belatedly kicked in and returned fire with the Viper. The gunman jerked but fell noiselessly, and was already dead by the time I reached him. A creeping mist left dewdrops in my hair, and my breaths came out in pearly clouds. They're getting sneakier. Even I almost missed him. Don't kick yourself. We should be getting close. Look, aquatic research lab. That's where the entrance is supposed to be. As the entrance to an ancient Lux Veritatis stronghold, it wasn't terribly promising. Stark, utilitarian, and utterly modern concrete and steel had been crafted into a chamber that had to be 7 or 8 stories high. It reminded me of an old Soviet submarine dock, but with none of the latter's touristy charm. Narrow walkways divided the room into bottomless tanks of water, each with its own warning signs and flashing orange beacons. Lines of observation windows on the upper levels were frosted with moisture. I listened intently, but heard nothing above the sighing whispers and dripping of water. Reports from my nose dredged up memories of the showers at school camp. Sour, mildewy scents mixing with cleaning fluids and, strangely, long-dead fish and iodine. Where Muller's biodome had been extravagant to the point of causing hallucinations, the ARL resembled nothing so much as a run-down public aquarium. It was decidedly chilly to boot. The entrance must be around here somewhere. Whoa! Panting, I picked myself up and watched the creature circle to the far side of the tank. Its squid-like body was banded with black and yellow stripes, neatly matching the danger signs placed around its tank, and had enough length and girth to shame a bull saltwater crocodile. I felt the colour slowly return to my cheeks, and then abruptly drain away again when I noticed a large gate set into the floor of the tank. I double-checked the map against the room's dimensions and had to resist the urge to scrunch it into a ball and toss it to the waiting monster. I'd found the entrance to the vault of trophies all right, and Eckhardt's guardfish was on duty right on top of it. There was no point wallowing in negativity. I'm an archaeologist, not a cake decorator. It's part of my job description to tackle life or death obstacles in pursuit of my goal. Meaning no offence to cake decorators. I'm sure getting that last sugared rose into place before an angry mother of the bride arrives is just as stressful. You're losing it. Open gate first, crack nervous witticisms later. Could I shoot the monster and have done with it? Probably not. Contrary to popular belief, bullets don't travel well through water. Even a healthy caliber such as my Viper would only get a couple of feet beneath the surface before the bullet lost momentum and disintegrated. Unless I found a harpoon gun, the creature was safe. What about an electric shock? Although it was feasible that I might find a convenient length of cable to dangle in the tank, the walkways were so conductive and the ambient humidity so high that I'd risk frying myself in the process. I like my body raw, not extra crispy. Come on, Lara. Think. Unbidden, I felt my subconscious mind slowing down my breathing. It was a trick that could usually be relied upon to clear my thoughts. But the invasive smell was just too powerful to ignore. Maggie's earlier comments about instinctual responses had been right about that, at least. We're programmed, hardwired, to feel repulsed by that which has the potential to cause us harm. Evolution tends to favour those who can recognise spoiled foods over those who can't. My ancestors must have had some pretty sensitive noses, if my stomach's reactions were anything to go by. As I explored the upper portions of the chamber, the odours grew so strong that I swooned. Eventually, I found the source tucked away in a side room. A butcher's table and bins, literally crawling with putrefying offcuts too mangled to be identified. Oh, looks like breakfast. I wonder. It's certainly a better plan than the others. What are you waiting for? My plan would need careful timing. In a convenient locker room, I quickly stripped down and donned the gear belonging to the Strahof's employees that would improve my chances of surviving entry into the vault. On went 3mm neoprene shorties. The spray had been cool, but not icy, and an ankle strap to keep Wren's knife within easy reach. Having zipped into my wetsuit, I folded my clothing and dry goods into the bottom of my pack. A couple of waterproof torches, a backup pack of chemical flares, flippers and an aqualung were added to my arsenal. As a final thought, I made sure my guns were well protected in plastic sheaths within their holsters. Having sodden weapons when I eventually discovered dry land would be as bad as having no weapons at all. At last I stood, shivering and goosepimply, on the edge of the tank. The squiddy monster thing circled warily, waiting for me to step within range. Beside me sat a heavy bucket lugged all the way from the reeking offal bins. I hope that thing is hungry. I strapped on my flippers, snapped on a pair of goggles, adjusted my mouthpiece to the on position, and without further ado, tipped the entire bucket into the water. A cloud of pinkish-red blood began spreading like a tumour through the crystal-clear water. Fist-sized hunks of meat bobbed and began sinking. The monster's head twitched around, almost comically, and like a torpedo, it sped towards me and circled the cloud of chum, gnashing its long pincers. It was the moment I'd been waiting for. Before I could talk myself out of it, I'd clamped the mouthpiece between my teeth and dived in, taking care to choose a spot well away from the floating offal. My plan worked better than I dared hope. Squinting through the bubbles, I saw the monster was totally occupied by the bait. My shivering vanished as I swam down, relishing the warmth of working muscles. The gate was held closed by a simple wheel lock, exactly the same as those used aboard ships and submarines. The wheel was almost a metre in diameter, but after several agonizing seconds of tugging and pulling, the mechanism yielded. A blanket of trapped air billowed out, engulfing me in bubbles. After a glance back to make sure the guardfish was still occupied, I kicked my way down into the gaping darkness. My torch shone off layers of shale and spillite basalts as I headed deeper and deeper. A spiteful ache began stabbing at my brain as the pressure mounted, but then my ears popped and the discomfort vanished. Tick-tock, my air supply beat. The clock was running.
In episode 17 of Tomb Raider, The Angel of Darkness, Lara Croft was played by J.R. Milward. Kurtis Trent, Pieter Van Eckhardt, and Joachim Karel were played by Adamm Khuevrr. Written and adapted by J.R. Milward. Based on an original story by A. Murti Schofield. With music by Peter Connolly and Martin Iveson. Additional sound effects courtesy of www.freesfx.co.uk, the BBC, and the YouTube Audio Library. Produced by Stephen Milward. Lara Croft and Tomb Raider are the property of Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix.